Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be tackling something pretty huge today
Definitely huge.
and pretty complex.
Absolutely.
We are talking about big data.
That's right.
So I was doing a little research for this episode,
Mm-hmm.
and, just thinking about all the different places the data is coming from these days.
Yeah,
It seems like everything is generating data now.
pretty much.
Like everything.
I mean, think about like your smartwatch
Right?
or even just like your phone.
Yeah, your phone is tracking like everywhere you go.
Exactly.
And then there's like all the stuff online, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time you click on something,
You're generating data.
you buy something,
Yep.
watch a video.
All of it.
It's kind of crazy to think about.
It really is.
And then there's all the data that's being generated by businesses and organizations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like I was reading that there are sensors in like everything these days,
It's true.
like in cars and airplanes and even like farm equipment.
Yeah, they're collecting data on like everything.
So what exactly are we talking about when we say big data?
Well, the definition that we found from Google was data that is so large and complex that it can't be managed or analyzed by traditional business intelligence tools.
So we're not talking about like your average spreadsheet here.
Yeah. Not
This is like next level stuff.
Exactly.
I can't even imagine trying to open a spreadsheet with like all the data from Twitter or something.
You'd need a supercomputer for that.
Probably more than one.
Yeah, probably.
When I was looking at the source material for this episode, I saw this image that showed like what a zettabyte represents.
Oh, yeah.
It's like mind-boggling.
It is. It really puts things into perspective.
Like that's how much data we're talking about.
A zettabyte.
It's insane.
It really is.
So, okay, we've got all this data,
Yep.
but like, what's the problem?
Well, the problem is that our old ways of dealing with data just don't work anymore.
So, like, what do you mean?
Well, in the past, if you needed to store more data, you could just get a bigger server. Like you could just scale things vertically.
Okay.
But with big data, it's just not feasible to keep adding more and more hardware.
Like, it's not just about the cost.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also about the physical limitations of the hardware itself.
It's like trying to fit an elephant to a smart car.
Exactly. At some point, you need a different vehicle.
You need something bigger.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
Well, the solution is distributed systems.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but can you explain what it means?
Sure. So basically, instead of trying to store all the data in one place,
Like on one giant server?
you split the data up into smaller chunks and spread it out across a network of computers.
So it's like teamwork.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, and this approach has a lot of benefits.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it's much more scalable.
So you just keep adding more computers to the network as you need them.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
And another benefit is that it's more fault tolerant.
So if one computer crashes, the whole system doesn't go down. That's really important when you're dealing with this much data.
Absolutely.
So how did this whole distributed systems thing come about?
Well, it all started back in the early 2000s with Google.
Oh, yeah.
They were facing this massive data explosion themselves.
Makes sense. They're like the kings of data.
Exactly. So they came up with these two groundbreaking technologies.
Ooh, tell me more.
One was called the Google File System, or GFS for short,
Okay.
and the other was called MapReduce.
Interesting. So what do those do?
Well, GFS is all about storing the data.
Okay.
Like I was saying before, it splits the data into chunks and spreads it out across a network of computers.
Mm-hmm.
And MapReduce is all about processing the data.
So once the data is stored, GFS MapReduce figures out how to make sense of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It was a real game changer.
So how does MapReduce actually work?
Well, it's a two-step process.
Okay.
First, you have the map phase where you take your big data.
Which is probably like super complicated.
Yeah, and you break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks.
Okay.
And then you send those tasks out to all the computers in the network.
So each computer is working on a small piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
I'm liking these teamwork analogies.
Me too.
So what's the second step?
The second step is the reduce phase.
Okay.
Once all the computers have finished their tasks.
They've all mapped out their part of the problem.
Right, then you bring all the results back together and combine them.
So it's like having a team of chefs all working on different parts of a giant feast.
Yes.
And then they all bring their dishes to the table and you have this amazing meal.
That's a great analogy.
I was pretty proud of that one.
It works really well.
So where does Hadoop fit into all of this?
Well, Hadoop is an open source framework that was inspired by Google's work on GFS and MapReduce.
So it's like a way for other organizations to use these same principles to manage and process their own big data.
Exactly.
And Hadoop is still being used today, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
one of the most popular big data frameworks out there.
Cool. So we've talked about GFS and MapReduce and Hadoop,
Hmm.
but you mentioned earlier that there's another player in the game,
I did.
something called Spark.
Yes, Apache Spark.
So what is Spark?
Well, Spark is another open source framework for big data processing.
Okay.
But it's actually quite different from Hadoop in a few key ways.
So how is it different?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that Spark keeps the data in memory,
Okay.
while Hadoop stores the data on disk.
So what does that mean in practice?
Well, it means that Spark can process data much faster than Hadoop,
Like how much faster?
up to 100 times faster.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is.
So Spark is like the speed demon of big data.
You could say that.
I mean, in today's world, speed is everything.
It really is.
Like businesses need to be able to make decisions quickly,
Absolutely.
and they need to be able to analyze massive amounts of data to do that.
Exactly.
So Spark is like the perfect tool for the job.
It is.
So we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from the definition of big data to the challenges of managing and processing all that data,
Mm-hmm.
to the innovative solutions that have emerged like distributed systems in GFS and MapReduce and Hadoop and Spark.
It's been a whirlwind tour.
It has.
Yeah.
But I think it's been really important to take a deep dive into this topic
I agree.
because big data is only going to become more and more important in the years to come.
Absolutely.
Like it's already impacting so many aspects of our lives,
It is.
and that impact is only going to grow.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
With the amount of data growing exponentially, what new innovations will we see in the future to manage and analyze it?
That's a great question.
And what impact will these innovations have on our lives?
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, it's going to be an exciting ride.
It always is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into big data.
It was my pleasure.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world of technology.
Sounds good.